Okay.
You ready?
Yes. Go ahead.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Conteh. Again, we want to thank our audience for being here again. I know we took a long break. Um, it's been a few weeks since we came here. But today, Dr. Conteh, we want to talk about a few things. So much has passed since we have been here. We want to look at the Barrow's new cabinet appointments. In addition to some other appointments he made, particularly to the National Assembly also. And then we want to look at the central bank's communique on the currency, foreign currency issue in the country, particularly the dollar and the British pound or the euro. We also want to look at the white paper that just came out. The Gambia government just issued a white paper responding to the recommendations of the TRRC. So we will briefly look at that one also. But without taking much time, Dr. Conteh, we will begin with the new cabinet. And this is what I have to say about Barrow's new cabinet. Barrow has reshuffled. Perhaps that's not the right word. He has appointed a new cabinet following the presidential and National Assembly elections in the Gambia. Key things in that new cabinet is that we have a new vice president in the passing of Mr. Badara, what's his name? Badara Diouf. Yes, Badara Diouf, a very renowned guy, very eloquent guy. I remember many of his speeches back in the days when I was going to high school. Some of which he did at my former school, St. Augustine's High School. Badara spent a lot of his time at the, I think, Department of Education, right? So Badara is the new vice president, replacing Dr. Aissatou Toure. I have no doubt about Mr. Diouf's qualifications for the vice presidency. However, there are quite a few observations that one needs to make about that position. The vice presidency, many over the years have come to take it for granted that it is a position that is exclusively reserved for women. Since Jammeh's time, much of Jammeh's rule, Asarinjai Sedi, a renowned women's activist, has been the vice president of the Gambia. And when Barrow took over after the 2016 presidential elections, he continued to nominate women as vice president. First, Fatoumata Tambajang Jallow, and then Asarinjai Toure. But before that, briefly, Dabo, he appointed Mr. Dabo, lawyer Hussein Dabo, a male, as VP, which was very short-lived, but he went back to appointing females as the vice president. So it would have been very good to keep that tradition. I'm sure there are many women, qualified women in the country that can serve as vice president, even outside Dr. Toure. But nonetheless, Mr. Diouf is the VP, and we will see how he is able to help Barrow transform the Gambia. I know the role of the vice presidency is very dormant. They pretty much don't do much. They are not very much in the limelight. They are often seen filling in for the president in public events. I do hope Barrow make good use of his vice presidents. I think the role of Asarinjai Sedi during Jammeh's time has not been a very good use of the role of the vice president. Vice presidents should be people who are not only good administrators, but also who have very good judgment in terms of the economy, in terms of society, and they should be able to help the president manage some of these difficult decisions. I would expect Barrow to work very closely with his new vice president, Mr. Juve. Always have him in the room when he makes very important decisions, and make sure he gets his input, because that's all President Barrow needs. He needs skilled, smart people around him who can help him make sound decisions. We all understand Barrow's deficiency when it comes to understanding and appreciating and maneuvering some of these very difficult economic or societal issues. But having said that, Dr. Conteh, I also want to briefly talk about the new education minister, Dr. Pierre Gomez. Pierre is an educationist, and I have no doubt of his qualifications. I want to believe that he will do a terrific job in helping move the education sector forward. There are a lot of challenges in the education sector, not only poor resources, underpayment of teachers, and lack of spaces in our schools. So I'm sure Dr. Gomez is very much aware of this, and he's going to work very hard to try to tackle these issues. Information Minister is my own home guy, kind of a close relative of mine, Mr. Jame, Queen Jame. I think he will do a terrific job. He has been the spokesperson of NPP for time. But in addition, in relation to these, Mr. Jame replaced Ibrahim Silla, the Information Ministry. Silla now is the Works Ministry. Silla is a journalist by training. I don't think if he is a good fit at the Ministry of Works and Infrastructure, I would rather see Barrow appoint an engineer at that place. There are very young, smart people at the Ministry of Works. I will not name names, but I know some very smart people there who, even though may not have experience in administration, but I think Barrow should have looked for somebody who is an experienced person as an engineer who can man that place and be able to, because Gambia, the biggest problem, my surprise when I went to Gambia recently, is the lack of infrastructure. There's a lot of private infrastructure. People are building, construction is going on in the country, but there is lack of public infrastructure, Dr. Conteh. There are no roads. The few roads that are constructed, are not even fit for traffic. There are no traffic rules. I'll come to this when I come to my experience in the Gambia. But I have been driving in the US for I don't know when. I couldn't drive in the Gambia. Part of the reason I understand is my, complete. How would I put it? I was a complete loss in the Gambia. I have no spatial understanding of where I was. I have not been in the country for a very long time. So part of the problem is due to that. But also, lack of infrastructure is a big, big part because, an experienced driver should be able to drive in any city. You don't have to live in that city or have experience in that city to be able to drive there. But not in the Gambia, not in Banjul, not in Serekunda, not in urban Gambia. I'll come to this later on. But infrastructure, we will see what Mr. Silla does in that place. I hope he surrounds himself with engineers and people who are really smart and who understand these issues and are able to help transform urban Gambia, particularly, into a livable environment. The feeder roads are terrible. Terrible is the word. I actually, when I look at Gambia, urban Gambia, Banjul, Serekunda, and the environs, I call it a beautiful chaos. It looks impressive. I mean, in terms of what you see, but it looks like it's a jungle. There are no rules. Is nothing seems to be organized. So it's very chaotic in my view. And what my good friend Dr. Sen told me about this. He said, "Well, you once you stay around a little bit, you drive around a little bit, you get used to it." So, but I didn't spend that much time there to get used to it. It was still very strange to me, but that's that. So we'll see what Silla does at this. And the biggest scandal, in my view, Dr. Conteh, is the agriculture ministry. Agriculture is the biggest problem in the country. The Gambia is unable to feed itself. Much of our economic problems are rooted in the problems of agriculture. Agriculture should be the focus for this country to be transformed. Yet we have somebody who many people consider a novice, Dr. Sally, a nurse by training. I don't know why they call him a doctor, but my understanding is that he's not a medical doctor. He was a nurse. I will ask for his forgiveness if that statement is not true. I don't know for sure. I don't know him personally, but I've had many people say that he is a nurse by training. And he has no experience whatsoever in agriculture or even in administration, not to my knowledge or awareness. So I want to say that very cautiously, but to see him as the Ministry of Agriculture is almost a scandal. They are very qualified. I know some of these appointments are political, paybacks. Barrow wants to reward these people who backed his campaign, who supported his campaign, who helped him win the presidency. But I mean, we should be, moving the Gambia forward should be our primary goal of leadership, of managing the affairs of our country. So Sabali is, I can almost say authoritatively that Sabali is not fit to be at the Ministry of Agriculture. However, having said that, I think he can mitigate. He can try to do better by bringing in people, skilled people, experienced people in agriculture management. I know a lot of people in agriculture. Many of my classmates, college classmates, ended up working for the Department of Agriculture. There are lots of them there. I can't even begin to count them. And I have no doubt about their capabilities and their qualifications and their experiences. They've worked there since. So many of these people can help Dr. Sabali. If he's willing to learn and is willing to work with these people, they can help him redirect the country. Food production in the country, marketing of agricultural produce, livestock. One of my good friends, my former classmate, is into livestock production. Many of these people have no option but to sell live animals. We need to have a robust meat industry in the country, where animals can be slaughtered and the meat packaged, and distributed to the warehouses and to the storage, to the stores, grocery stores, where people can easily have access. These things can bring prices of food down very rapidly and create employment in the country. So these ideas have to come from people who have worked in agriculture, who have studied agricultural economics, people who have studied animal husbandry, agronomy, and there are endless, there are a large number of people that I know myself who can help Dr. Sabali do better in this department. Barrow also made some changes at defense. I don't have much to say about that. Defense is something I'm not too worried about. Gambia is a small country. I don't think we're ever going to go to war. I don't even think we need the large army we have currently. If I were in position to reform the Gambian economy, I'll make a huge cut in the military. and I will make a huge cut in foreign service. So those are areas I will definitely, probably the sports ministry too. That department will probably completely go away. Sports will be totally privatized. Um, Tourism may be totally privatized. There will not be a ministry of tourism or ministry of sports. Defense will be totally cut very seriously, and foreign service will be totally diminished, cut very seriously. But that is what I want to say, Dr. Conteh. And then briefly, I also want to say, following the appointment of these ministers, new cabinet, what you tend to see is an immediate embarkment on countrywide tours. Almost ministers started touring countrywide. Recently, who is it? Ibrahim Silla was on tour of projects around the country. And then before that, Dr. Gomez was on tour looking at education facilities around the country. Recently, the IGP was on tour. Sanya is a friend of mine. I'm going to speak very kindly of him. Sanya was also on tour looking at the police facilities around the country. These tours are not necessarily useless. There are some value to them. But what is more important is what you do when you come back from these tours. Many a time these tours are used as decoys. You do a very publicized tour around the country looking at these facilities, and you come back to your office, and you go silent. We don't see any reforms. We don't see anything again. So I know at this time everybody is trying to impress Barrow, to give the impression that they are all for change and they are all for reform. They are all about doing things differently. So I think the real motivation for most of these conducted tours around the country of facilities and projects are basically driven by that. But it should really be driven by the desire or the willingness, backed by ideas, solid ideas, to transform the country, not just to create impressions. That's what I want to say about the about Barrow's new cabinet, Dr. Conteh. Of course, he also made some appointments to the National Assembly, nominated National Assembly members. I had suggested earlier to the new government in 2017 that they should abolish nominated members of parliament. And I understand this was highlighted. This came up in the failed draft constitution, but unfortunately, we still have nominated members of parliament. And then there are some appointments there among the nominated members who, in the passage of Fabakary Tombong, my own uncle, and Sirin Jai, who became the speaker and the deputy speaker, respectively, of the National Assembly. Those appointments were made by President Barrow. Mr. Jatta Fabakary is a very competent guy. He's been the majority leader of APRC for many, many, many years. He is widely experienced in National Assembly matters, and I have no doubt that he will do a terrific job as the speaker. Nonetheless, these appointments are quite controversial, understanding that they're coming from APRC, Jammeh's party. Jammeh has been very notorious for all the abuses he has done during his reign in the Gambia. So those are things people have been talking about quite a bit, and those deserve some focus and some discussion as well. Dr. Conteh, what do you have to say about Barrow's new cabinet?
Oh, okay. Thanks for giving me the chance to respond. For me, the office of the vice president should not be reserved for any gender. It should be there for whoever is qualified. And let's not get into, because we have women activists who are asking for equity, diversity. So why should we create a position of the office of the vice president specifically for women? I think we just need to have somebody who is competent to be in that office. History will actually tell us that even on the side of that we never had a female vice president, and Jame decided to appoint Asadunjai Sedi to get the women votes. Let's be realistic. And her involvement in the student demonstration is something that one has to think about. So, but the office of the vice president, to me, vice presidents in the Gambia, particularly on the Barrow, they serve only less than 18 months and they are gone. So when you are a vice president, you are almost at the exit door to leave. Whatever the president wants to select as vice president is fine. But I still do believe that the vice president needs to be schooled on monetary and fiscal policies, because when he spoke the first time, he challenged the Ministry of Trade and Finance to come up with some monetary, to come up with some finances to help us, to help the country, which I thought that was very, very premature, because that discussion should be at the cabinet level. And I am going to basically be talking about that. Uh, Oftentimes in our country, anytime we need budget support, our support is denominated only in loans. When we look at the accounting equation, assets equal liabilities plus equity, and we want to raise cash, all we do in the country is basically going out there to ask for loans. And I think World Bank actually violated their own standards when they said that Gambia is highly indebted. And then why would they turn around? I'm not trying to say that they shouldn't take the loan, but with the way we have inflation in the Gambia, hyperinflation, because in 2019 December, when they were preparing the 2020 budget, I wrote to the office of the president and complained that the budget was not sustainable, that it will create hyperinflation, that the Gambian dollar will depreciate in value. I even engaged, the Secretary General of the Gambia, and there was nothing else he could do. And I was very, very disappointed when they approved the 2020 budget. I, in fact, stated to the president's office that before November 2020, they're going to be asking for supplemental approval, because what's going to happen is they're going to spend more than what was budgeted. But they went ahead and did it. I again complained about the 2021 budget. Say we're going to have hyperinflation. They didn't listen. The 2022 budget, the same thing. And as a matter of fact, what I never understood, and I hope Minister Sidi Keita will actually take a look at it. I want to even engage the budget director in the country, is that they have information on the citizens' budget, which is totally different from the approved budget. So how can you have data out there for citizens of the Gambia to look at? But when you say citizens' budget, what was appropriated, the total revenues and grants, meaning tax and non-tax revenues, plus project and program grants, the numbers are different. I also would like to challenge the minister by looking at the fact that they can report actual expenditure from January to December 31, 2021. It's still there, it's there now, but they cannot tell us the actual revenues. But when you were preparing the budget, you stated that this is what you would have in tax and non-tax revenue, project and program grant revenue. You detailed the total revenues that you're going to have for the country. You were able to identify or strategize or budgeted that these are the expenditures you're going to have, whether it's personal emoluments, whether it is capital expenditure, whether it is interest payment on debt. But then you turn around when you were trying to give Gambians the actual expenditure, but you fail to tell Gambians actually what was actually earned or received in 2021. And it is also interesting that most Gambians cannot access the PDF files in the country. Because I spoke to several folks to say, can you go down to the Ministry of Finance website and try to upload? They say, oh, it's going to take my credits. So how can we make informed decisions when Gambians, even parliamentarians, cannot even access that? So now, I was able to look at the total debt under Yaya Jammeh up to 2016, and my computation was around 114 billion. And then I try to reconcile to see whether, in fact, after making the payments, periodic payments for 2017, 2018, 2019 to 2020, whether the number is still going to be around 114. But now Mamburenja are going to turn around and say that the total debt of the country is 89 billion, which is wrong. So here we are. We have a new minister. I am willing to assemble a team here in the United States because politics is all over. It's over. What we have to take a look at is how we can look at fiscal and monetary policies in the country. So if we don't, most of us who are here in diaspora, whether you live in the United Kingdom or you live in Germany, whether you are sending British pounds sterling or whether you're sending euro or the United States dollar, well, the quantity may be more than the Gambian dollars, but when your people receive the money, they go to the shop. They're gonna turn around and pay, buy goods that are highly priced. So we don't look at anything in nature to say that, well, we import more than we export. And with the war in Ukraine, even the euro has suffered because in November, the 100 US dollar was equivalent to 120, no, 100 euro was equivalent to 123 US dollars. Few weeks ago, it was 118. Today, it stands at 107. The British pound sterling is going up, but the euro is depreciating. So if the euro depreciates, what do you think the Gambian dollar is going to be? The Gambian dollar right at this moment, if I round it up, is $54 is on the official market. So the Ministry of Finance is not looking at that. And then they're going to turn around and go and say, oh, we have budget support. The budget support means that what you indicated that you're going to raise, you are unable to. And then look at the Gambia Revenue Authority, and I will still talk against the Gambia Revenue Authority. I think we need to try to engage our parliamentarians so that we can repeal the Gambia Revenue Act. Because this Gambia Revenue Act, in my view, because I spoke to several folks, I said, can you try to ask a shopkeeper in the Gambia whether Revenue Authority people come down there to ask to get them to pay taxes, and when they pay taxes, they give the money to them. Tell me at night, if you go to a shop, you tell somebody you owe $2,000, $3,000, $5,000. At the end of, in fact, there is nobody there other than them. If they receive that $5,000, tell me how much of that money the government is going to have. Unless I doubt that we had a treasury. Why should we have the Gambia Revenue Authority assessing taxes, collecting taxes, and also recording taxes? And then when this Director General the Director General of the Gambia Revenue Authority said that they raised $4 billion. Well, he had always been saying that they always raise $4 billion, which means $1 billion every year. And then I looked at the budget. I said, well, you were entrusted to collect $18 billion. And somebody said, oh, we were budgeted to receive 13. I say, no, you forgot about non-tax revenue. So adding all those things up now, tell me that if in 4 months, you were only able to collect $4 billion, and you have budgeted 17 billion or 18 billion to receive. Tell me the remaining 8 months. Are you going to be able to collect 14 billion?
to make the difference? No, they're not going to. So my argument is, and look at those people who are going out there at car parks. They getting these drivers to pay them money for every single day, and tell me at the end of the day, KMC, do they receive that money? I don't think KMC receives all the money that's being assessed on tax to drivers. How about the women out there who are at the markets? If they charge them $20 is $30 is $40 is $50 is the person collecting that money. Tell me whether that money is gonna go into KMC or Brikama Area Council or any other councils coffers. No, it's not going to. So we are saying that we have the potential of raising, of increasing or streamlining our tax revenue, but the money goes into the tax agents' pocketbooks. If you don't believe me, go and look at the average revenue authority employees compound. When you get in there, you'll be ashamed of even you here in the United States what they have in there. So this is what the Minister of Finance should do. This is what we should talk about openly. Repeal the Gambia Revenue Act. And then again, let me also add something else, which I just don't understand. Why do we still have value-added tax? Value-added tax is regressive. Can the Minister of Finance tell us the total revenue that they collected on value-added tax? I am willing to help the Barrow administration, but I think, the so-called technocrats are deceiving the president, because going out there to get budget support from the World Bank to the tune of 336 billion. Tell me what's going to happen. What effect that's going to have on the Gambian dollar? It's going to further devalue the Gambian dollar. So it seems like we only look at one side of the accounting equation to say that if we need cash, let's go borrow. We cannot sit down and think about how we can restructure our revenue base. I want to add another thing which I think is disingenuous, and we need to talk about that. People who are merchants who are importing goods to the Gambia, do you know that they ask for duty waivers? Is that fair? Should we have duty waivers for every Tom, Dick, and Harry in the Gambia? And even if you're going to give duty waivers, should they not pay 50% of what they're supposed to pay? So so they are deceiving the president. They are deceiving the president. So I call on all Gambians, whether you support UDP, whether you support the UDP or any other political party. Election is over now. What we have to do is nation building. But I believe that the Barrow will fail because of corruption, and he's trying to fight it. But guess what? How can he fight all this stuff when you know that there are so many leakages in the country? The civil servants, the people who are entrusted to carry out the directives of the president, they are corrupt. And the president, and every time we blame the president. No, we have to change our attitudes. We have to change our attitude. So what is happening? What is happening is deplorable in our country, in a sense that it seems like people who work for the government, Gambia niman sakunda niman sunya roge ba manfuta. That's the deal. Because when you go out there, they try to show you their big houses, their big cars, but when they retire as permanent secretaries, when you see them on the street, you can't even recognize them. And yesterday, when Friday comes, we go to the mosque, we say, Mashallah. We talk about all this Islamic stuff and so forth. And then, even before they go to the mosque, they steal from the poor people. This is not the president's fault. And when you go out there as an independent-minded person who wants to fight corruption, guess what? They're going to lie on you. They're going to go out to the marabou. I don't believe in this marabou business, but I'm scared of the fact that you cannot go to anybody's house as a diasporan and for them to cook for you and eat, because you will die. So these are problems that we have. It is not the president's fault. My agenda now is to blame the civil servants, the people who are entrusted to run the affairs of our country. So when it comes to the vice president's post, I don't think it should be designated for women. I think it should be designated for anyone who is qualified. And if we have qualified women to be vice president, so be it. I'm even disappointed about the number of females that we have in parliament, in parliament, and also in the cabinet, and to the exclusion of Christians in our country. So let's come together to help our country. Let's help the Minister of Finance to be a successful minister, because we cannot be budgeting and then turn around and ask for budget support. 43% of Gambia's budget is on grant. It's on grants, whether it is project or program grants. And then you notice that, I don't want to take much of your time, but let me just elaborate here, because a lot of Gambians don't know this. Do you know that Gambia never had a budget surplus, meaning fiscal budget? If you take the total revenues, I'm talking about tax and non-tax revenues, program and project grants, if you add all of them, you add your expenditures, whether it is the personal emoluments, whether it is the payment on interest, not payment on debt. Payment on debt cannot be paid until we borrow money. And you talk about capital expenditure. When you add the capital expenditure, it's more than the total revenues of the country. And then we have a fiscal deficit. Sometimes it's about $3 billion. Guess what they have to do? They have to turn around. They have to turn around and go borrow domestically or externally. Is that the president's fault? No, it is not the president's fault. It is the technocrats, because you are budgeting more than you spend. You are budgeting more than you earn. So as a result, and guess what happened? When we have this fiscal deficit, they go and borrow. So you can have a fiscal deficit of 7 billion. No, you can have a fiscal deficit of 3 billion, but they will go and borrow 7 billion. So that 4 billion, guess what? So the 4 billion is going to pay the loans that they have to pay, whether it is the loan whether it is arrears, or they're going to pay domestic and external loans, and then after that, the residual they're going to have, the 3 billion, is artificial. It's creative accounting. So that 3 billion as a surplus, if you negate it to the negative, meaning the deficit, you get a zero, and then you say you balance the budget. Is that the president's fault? No, it is not the president's fault. So for someone who supported President Barrow, I think we should be able to enlighten Gambians, enlighten the president's office, that those who are entrusted, with the exception of the Minister of Finance, because he's coming in, and I'm going to try to do everything that I can to help him. The Gambia's problem is fraud, self-enrichment. The president talked about it, that he wants to fight corruption. Whatever they did 5 years ago, we cannot do anything about it because we can't prosecute them. But now let's turn around and say, what is the way forward for our country? Every time you go to the store, things are expensive, even building materials. So how do we expect to meet the obligations that we need to have? But we can go out there and take loan, or the Chinese gave us a loan to build that Sadauda Karaba Convention Center. Tell me since January, since that place was open, how many activities they had over there, and tell me how much money they raised. And they also have to pay the loan they took from the Chinese. But yes, still Gambian kids, they cannot feed Gambian kids. Is that the president's fault? No, it's not the president's fault. We have corrupt people out there in government, and we need to say it like it is. Otherwise, I tell you what is going to happen. My prediction is that right now the Gambian dollar stands at what? The Gambian dollar right now it stands at 54 official market rate. The euro is 57. The pound sterling is 67. But I can predict to you, my friends, Gambians, and today is what? Today is the 29th of May, 2022. I can predict to you, by December 31, the Gambian dollar is going to be $60. I'm not talking about the black market rate. I'm talking about the official rate. It's going to be 60. So what's going to happen? If that happens? The price of commodity is going to increase. Even for us who are sending money, you may say, "Oh, now I have to send less money." You cannot send less money, because if your people turn around and go to the market, guess what they're going to do? They have to pay. They have to take more money out of their pocket. So basically, what is happening, is that I'm not saying that we are doomed for failure. Is that we need to be able to come together to find ways to develop our country. But if we sit down to criticize, nothing is going to happen. The people who are stealing from the government, the merchants who are going out there to ask for duty waivers, they are not friends of the Gambia. How can you be a businessman? You're going to be asking for duty waivers. So if they charge you, I used to work at Commercial Bank, and I don't understand what's going on here. So if you have to pay $20,000, you don't want to pay that? Why can't the government say you pay $10,000? Whatever duty waivers you ask for, you pay 50%. The only people who should be asking for duty waivers should be people who actually are what? Non-profit entities, Gambians who are buying materials to build. I can understand that. But business people who are registered business people, they should not be asking for duty waivers. The gun petroleum issue, I cannot talk about it right now because I don't want to take much of our time. But again, brothers and sisters, ladies and gentlemen, we cannot continue to criticize. Election is over. Do you want to criticize for 4.5 years continuously? You're going to have a heart attack, man. What we need to do is to come together. If those folks in the United Kingdom can have organization whereby they address Gambia diaspora issue, for us here in the United States, I challenge each and every one of you that we need to come together to find a way to salvage our country. Because if you send money, if you take your little savings here, you send them home, it affects you. If you are doing any business in the Gambia, oh my God, you cannot even do it, because the sooner, if you are there, your business will go. But the sooner you leave, everything collapses. But then if you are building over there, guess what? Prices go up. So my friend, I don't want to take much of your time. When it comes to our country, I think, no, it's sad, man. But let's hope that we can help President Barrow now. Let's assemble teams to find ways to solve our country's problems. Otherwise, we are doomed. And the people who are going to suffer are the ones that we have back home. We are fortunate here. You can have your 3 square meals. But right now, some people some people are going to bed in the Gambia now, hungry. Nobody wants to work. You go to the village, rainy season comes. Nobody wants to go to the rice fields. Nobody wants to go to the farm, because everybody is sitting down depending on what? Masibolo. Because it's sad. I am.
Thank you, Dr. Conteh. Thank you very much for that explanation. Couple of things I want to highlight briefly. I totally agree with you that the position of vice presidency should not and does not have to be exclusively reserved for women. However, my view is that it would be a good practice if each president that comes is able to intensively look for, canvass for a very qualified female and identify that person for the vice presidency. It doesn't have to be favors. It doesn't have to be somebody not qualified or somebody not even the best qualified. But if we have a best qualified candidate in a female, would like that person to be given a priority to serve as vice president. And part of the reason for this is that women have been long marginalized in Gambia. If you look at education, if you look at every sector, women are left behind. We still have a culture in the Gambia that marginalizes women on a daily basis. So some of the women that are able to excel, are able to do very well, can compete toe-to-toe with men, definitely deserve given a priority or even a preference in appointments like that. I know Jame had a good reason for appointing a female as vice president. And the two main reasons are that the vice presidency in Nasarinjai Sedi as a woman vice president almost assured Jame of the female vote. And also the fact that Nasarinjai Sedi had no political ambition. So Jame could go to bed and sleep very well, knowing that Nasarinjai Sedi will never rise up against him. He had some disappointment in his former vice president in Sana Sabali, and Edward later did not threaten Jame's rule, but Jame, I'm sure, was not very 100% trusty of Edward as a military officer being his vice president. So those might have been the two motivations for Jame to leave Asarinjai Sedi there for all these years. And you mentioned the National Assembly. I totally agree. We have a lot of women in the National Assembly that do not fit to be in that place. But unfortunately, National Assembly membership is a choice of communities, and these communities they have a different criteria for who should be their representative in the National Assembly. They don't largely look at qualifications or education or anything. They largely look at people who are community-oriented, people who are active in their communities, and people who have the popularity and the something like that, the human connection and all that. But having said that, Doctor, you talk about GRA, and I was going to, so I was really going to talk about, I think I might just go into that. I was going to talk briefly about my experience in the Gambia. So that was going to come later on, but since you talk about GRA and the issue of corruption in the Gambia, I will go into that a little bit. I'll just touch the surface of this. I totally agree with you. GRA should not be one entity that assesses, collects, and records taxes. These functions should be broken apart and given to different institutions. The Treasury should play a role in this, like you rightly said. But my experience in the Gambia, my recent visit to the country, what I have understood is that, and this is a broad observation, so I'm not looking at one institution, but broadly speaking, Dr. Conteh, we have what I call Gambia's problems as it relates to corruption and fraud and all that stuff, government leakage and all that stuff. I call it basically transaction costs. And what I mean by that is broadly transaction costs. I'm sure economists understand what I'm talking about here. Transaction costs can basically, in my simple explanation of it, I would say that the cost involved bringing consumers and producers, buyers and sellers together. Okay, so from that perspective, I have deduced that in many of the government functions in the country, there are the steps that connect people to the services, especially governmental services provided by government, are so disconnected that, in my view, the cost is huge in terms of time and money. And whether you are trying to cross the ferry, or whether you go to the immigration to process some document, or whether you are at the airport trying to fly out of the country or fly into the country, wherever you are, pretty much the government system that serves the people is huddled with so many steps and cost that make it difficult for the Gambian people to get through it. So, in my view, what has evolved along the side of this is the informal system that many of these government employees have devised that breaches the government system. And it's very simple and effective. You don't have to go through that huddle of waiting and waiting and waiting. It's pretty quick. You just have to pay money on the side and you get what you want in no time. It beats the government system. And that is why it is going to be very, very difficult to solve this problem of corruption in the Gambia. I've come through some experiences of this myself. My brother was the one driving me around in Serakunda in during my stay in Banjul in the Gambia. And we've encountered issues with police officers. And I've seen these issues of transaction costs and how people do not have time to follow the government procedure of doing things because it's so cumbersome. They prefer to deal with their problems on the side very quickly and very effectively, therefore denying government revenue. And I mean, you go to Barrow, you try to cross the ferry on Sunday. You will see what happens. Pretty much any day. So, in my view, the Gambia's problem, part of the way we can explain endemic corruption in the Gambia is we have to look at it in the light of transaction cost. How have we devised systems that are lean, that are effective, that are efficient, that connect people to the services very effectively and very speedily? Now look at the if you look at the I understand many of these services in the Gambia now, they direct you to go to the banks. You go to EcoBank, make a payment there, get your receipt, and then travel to Bakau and stand in a line there. Maybe you will not get your service that day. You come back tomorrow, and whenever you get that service, you go home and wait 1 week before you get any response. Who has the time for that? I know this idea of going to a bank and make a payment for something, and then you then find your way to that institution and get your service. I understand it is well intentioned. It's probably devised to minimize corruption. But I mean, it doesn't lessen the burden of the people who are looking for services in the country. And it also creates a different kind of market. You go to these banks, you find agents there. People who are also working on behalf of other people. I mean, I don't know. I think we have to somehow. I know Gambia is still low tech. I might be asking for too much, but I think, Doctor, at some point we have to scratch our heads and devise a system that is effective and efficient and speedy, that can serve the people, and the people will be willing to follow that system to get the services they need rather than go through the back door and pay money quickly and get their services quickly and skip the line. It works for the individual, but it doesn't work for the country because, number one, it deprives the government of revenue. And number two, it encourages, disloyalty to the country, endemic corruption, and all the vices that come with that. So I just wanted to briefly say that one, and then and Dr. Conteh, you talked about the budget. I was going to bring that up a little bit during our our discussion about the current foreign currency issue in the country. But I think we will find time and dedicate a program on the budget. And we can probably run numbers here. And I was talking to you the last time, and if I remember rightly, you mentioned a budget deficit of something like 89 billion.
That was Mamburas.
That was Mamburas. Okay.
Actually, Gambia doesn't have Gambia's deficits are always close.
Yeah, they close it with yes. But it's still, when we talk about deficit, we are basically effectively talking about the amount of loans we have.
Mm-hmm.
So the debt burden of the country. So, and you and I both advocated for the termination of Mamburanjai, and I'm personally glad that he's gone. I wish him well. I hope he finds something else to do, but I don't think he was serving the Gambia very well as finance minister. I wish Mr. Keita, my former classmate at sixth form, we wish him well, Dr. Conteh. We want him to succeed very well, and I am sure, I have no doubt, he will do all he can to transform the Gambian economy. But Dr. Conteh, we will try to run numbers here at some point. I will dedicate a program to this. We can use financial tools here and make an argument how Gambia can resolve its budget deficit, how we can fill that gap. Gradually, I think I will give a timeline of 10 years, which is equivalent to 2 terms of one president, right?
Mm-hmm.
So in a president's 2 terms, he should be able to, I'm going to make an argument that the president in 2 terms, in 10 years, he should be able to bridge that budget deficit. He should fill that gap. And we will run numbers here together with our audience and see and make our argument. And we will come with tangible numbers that can be cut from the budget. I know UDP wanted to cut the budget by, did they say 8 million a year or so? I want to dispel that. I don't think they got the numbers right. But we will run proper numbers here using financial tools and make an argument how government can bridge that budget gap. Of course, this is going to require growing the economy as well and looking inwards, generating revenue within the country. And that cannot happen without expanding the economy, growing the economy. But we will put tangible numbers that need to be cut or resource refinance or redirected from elsewhere to bridge that gap. We will dedicate a time for that at some point. Dr. Conteh, we also wanted to talk briefly about the government restriction on budget. We're going to make this very brief. I know so much has been said about this. The Gambia government, a couple of weeks ago, through the central bank, issued a communique directing all banks to restrict access to foreign currency, particularly the dollar and the euro. On the surface of these, I do understand that, Dr. Conteh, governments can intervene in economies, in the foreign exchange market, to try to stabilize the economy. It is not unique to the Gambia. It has happened before. Many countries have attempted to do it. And currently, there are other countries in Africa. Nigeria is trying to do it. Other countries are trying to do it. I understand Malawi might be trying to do it. Kenya, it looks like it's trying to do it. Although to a lesser extent. All of these countries are doing it in a lesser extent than the Gambia is. Gambia is totally restricting or banning issuance of foreign currency to clients, even those clients who have foreign currency accounts in the banks. So on the surface of it, based on simple demand and supply, Dr. Conteh, we know that restricting access to foreign currency is not going to reduce the demand for it. It's going to escalate the demand for it, and therefore the price for it. So so I don't think is a good idea. In the short run, it may help the government to impose access on those on foreign currency, but I don't even know how that benefits the government. However, in the long run, it's going to further undermine the economy of the country because foreign currency prices will further escalate. And if we have too many people chasing too few dollars in the country, obviously the price of the dollar is going to go up. And that is currently what is happening in the Gambia. So I don't think it is a very good idea in the long run. I think IMF, I was reading a paper where IMF attributes the foreign currency crisis in not only the Gambia, but much of West Africa to what is called the spread. The spread is a financial term. It means there's a formula to calculate it, but basically it means the difference between the price that the banks are asking for foreign currency and the price that the banks are willing to pay for that foreign currency. So the difference between them, there's a formula. You subtract the bid price, which is the price, the highest price the banks are willing to pay for the foreign currency, and the ask price, which is the minimum they wanna sell it, they wanna buy it for, and you subtract the difference and then divide it by the ask price. So that's the formula for it. We're not going to go into that. That's a completely different thing, technical thing. But IMF attributed to that, the spread. It basically, if you look at it, it just basically means the demand for the dollar is high in the country. There's a dollar foreign currency crisis in Gambia. So, and this in the long run is not going to stop until Gambia is able to expand production in the country. We have to expand and grow our economy. I know the Statistics Department last week came up with numbers about Gambia's GDP being at 114 billion for, I think that was 2021 or 2022. But so I don't know how much the economy has grown so far. I think there were numbers that have been floating around, like 4-point-something%. But I don't know. The Gambian people are not feeling this. The Gambian people on a daily basis are feeling more and more poverty, more and more deprivation. So something needs to be done. Somebody needs to be able to sit down and crunch these numbers very hard and come up with a solution. I hope the President Barrow, keeps asking every finance minister, every time they meet, what is his or her strategy to close the budget gap? We have to have a strategy to close the budget gap. I'm not against deficit spending, Dr. Conteh. I am in support of deficit spending as a temporary measure, but it cannot be a lifestyle. We cannot make deficit spending a lifestyle, depending totally on grants and loans every year to close our budget. We cannot do that. There has to be a strategy to grow this economy and eventually close the budget gap and create a surplus and create employment and prosperity for our people. I know Halifa Sallah talk about this in what he called the national sovereign wealth. And he's talking about basically a similar thing, perhaps the same thing. It is a way of creating wealth, a way of creating a surplus, a way of creating prosperity for our people. We have to deal with this budget thing. We cannot make deficit spending, loans and grants a lifestyle. We have done this for how many years? Nobody can even tell. So that's what I want to say on this, Dr. Conteh. And then briefly, we will talk about the white paper and we will close for the day. Do you have anything to say about this? I know you've said you've already said a lot about the budget, but if you want to say something about what I've said briefly, you can. Otherwise, we jump to the white paper.
Yeah, let's go to the white paper.
All right, Dr. Conteh, the government last week came up with a response to the TRRC recommendations, which is called the government white paper. There are a lot of reactions to this, and I have my own views about it. The white paper, Barrow, well, let me say this first. First off, Dr. Conteh, I think the white paper is a very hardline response or approach to the TRRC recommendation. I had expected Barrow or the Ministry of Justice or the government in its white paper to be very, how would I put it, very lenient in its response to how to implement the recommendations of the TRRC. But Barrow accepted it. Some reports are saying 92-point-something% acceptance. Only a couple of things are rejected. That is the amnesty for Sana Sabali and Asarinjai Sedi. And what else was rejected? So there are a couple of things there that are turned down. One of them is the amnesty issue. But Dr. Conteh, the government has focused more on prosecution of many of these people, and many others who have been adversely mentioned will lose their jobs, will be fired or terminated. And the Justice Ministry said they're going to come up with a strategy how to deal with those people, but they're going to be dismissed, suspended immediately until they come up with a strategy about how to terminate some, who to terminate, who to retire, and stuff like that. But they are going to weed them all out of the civil service. Some will be banned from public office. So those are the myriad of responses the government has provided in the white paper. I think it is very heavy-handed. It is very hardline. I thought the government would focus more on extending amnesty to a number of people who have not committed egregious crimes, and also, focus more on reparations and reconciliation of the Gambian people. But even if what the white paper contains is to go by Dr. Conteh, I think the government is going to have a really, really hard time in prosecuting these people. Certainly, many of these cases cannot be prosecuted in the Gambia. We have to understand that besides the capacity issue in the Gambian courts, we have to understand that the TRRC is not a court of law, and its findings, many of them are going to be problematic in a criminal procedure. The Constitution itself, the 1997 Constitution itself, is not going to be very supportive of prosecuting many of these people. So it's going to be a hurdle. I know international jurisdiction may be the one that may end up resorting to deal with many of these prosecutions. Gambian courts and the Gambian law may not be adequate to deal with many of these. And I think the prosecutor, whoever it is, may use a lot of prosecutorial discretion to decide who to prosecute and who not to prosecute. Maybe, encourage them into a plea deal and provide additional evidence against other people who are highly culpable. So those might be some of the things they might resort to, but the high-priced ones like Jame, Asarinjai Sedi, and the junglers may be very, very difficult to prosecute in the Gambia. So in my view, the Gambia needs to focus more on reparations and reconciliations. And justifiably, many of these people who are serving in government positions need to be weeded out. I can understand that. But I mean, um, um, I think the response to it is well taken, and I think Barrow may have been concerned about the political consequences of totally rejecting TRRC's recommendations. But and to say the truth, he's been roundly applauded across the country. Even UDP applauded his decision to embrace the TRRC recommendations. Pretty much all over the country, people are commending him for embracing the report, the recommendations. But ultimately, we currently seem to be oblivious of the fact that these things are not going to be easy to prosecute in the country, and that Gambia may ultimately, put its hopes on reconciliation, not much more than reconciliation and reparations. Dr. Conteh.
Yeah, thank you very much. Well, for me, I tend to share the same view with you. If South Africa could do it, why not the Gambia? But I don't, people are just jumping guns, to get Jammeh out of Equatorial Guinea. Number one, Equatorial Guinea is not a member of the International Code of the Criminal Code.
Yeah.
So the only way that Jammeh can leave Equatorial Guinea is for the president to deport him, the president of Equatorial Guinea.
Right.
And if not, only if they overthrow the government in Equatorial Guinea.
Right.
But if his son becomes president, Jammeh is not going to leave.
Right.
And we have to be realistic about it. But a lot of people don't know that. Some people are welcoming, saying that, oh, we will be visiting you in mile 2.
Right. Yeah.
This is going to take a long time.
Right.
I don't even see it happening.
Right.
But then again, I'm very concerned also in a sense that because it's the president's decision. But what's going to happen to Fabakar Tombo Njata and Sidin Njata? I think this thing is conflicted. If I were the president, I will go through, get a tour of the country, ask imams and priests, about the way forward and how we can forgive each other. But I wish we had taken that route, because the reason why I'm saying that, I think I was in Form 1 or when we had the Matar Saram incident. And you see where the ark is. The arch is over there in Banjo.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so when Matar's body was brought, they didn't want to. The imam did not want to pray for his funeral. Already Saul Samba's body was taken for burial. It was the assistant imam, Chor or Kor.
Okay.
His compound just right next to Gambia High School.
And that's Kor.
Kor. People were going in and out, begging the guy to pray, so to lead a prayer so that he could be buried. He finally accepted. And when we were going, all of us were on the road going to the funeral, because I was there. We crossed paths with the government officials after they buried Sol Samba. And nobody said anything to anyone. So people came home that day, it was as if everybody died in Banjo. It was even questionable whether Sol Samba, whether Matar Sall killed himself. I believe that he was shot and killed. That's my own opinion. But if we are, as Muslims, we say submission to God and we forgive. And Christians also do believe in that. Rush to prosecution, a small country that is not even 12 miles from the sea to the Senegalese border, any side, any river in the Gambia, whether it is North Bank or our area going all the way to Basse. I'm kind of concerned the instability is going to create in the country. That I may be a minority in that, And so, who are the officials who were adversely mentioned? And if then that is the case, how about the Jallow Commission? Because they only took only one person, Mohamed Sabali, who was marginalized, and the rest they left them. So, do you see how we have double standard? But again, the prerogative is up to the president. But if I were him, advising him, I would say, Mr. President, take a tour of the country first and get ideas or opinions of the citizens, and then we call for reconciliation where we all can sit and talk. How we can get together, we can get along. But I'm very concerned, that prosecuting Jammeh will further destabilize our country, especially when we have the Casamance rebels. I don't call them rebels; I call them freedom fighters. Let me correct myself. I call them freedom fighters.
Okay.
I call them freedom fighters. I don't call them rebels. When you have the freedom fighters in Casamance trying to get their independence, because I come, my town is not too far from less than 10 miles. You are in Casamance. And if you're in Bullock, it's just less than even, I was asking a friend, he said about 4 miles. And then he told me that the freedom fighters, again, I have to get used to saying that. And I will call them that because Senegal cannot tell me what I have to say. Because Senegal threw drones in our country, and I'm not in support of that idea. So I'm not too happy with this. I have reservations. Reservations because will the people of Fonyi rise against this? Do we even know the people who are freedom fighters living in the Gambia? Do you know?
I used to back before I left for the US.
Uh-huh.
I used to
Mm-hmm.
to know people.
Mm-hmm.
And this has not been. I've not conducted any work on this,
Mm-hmm.
but I know people who do come from Casamance
Mm-hmm.
and stay in Gambia for a few weeks,
Mm-hmm.
month,
Mm-hmm.
and then go back. And I used to interact with them.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them live around the area I live. They live with people I know and close to me a little bit.
Yeah.
So we used to play draft together back in the day when I was teaching in the Gambia.
Mm-hmm.
And it was believed, and I have to make this clear. I have not verified this, but it was believed that there is a number of these people, a couple of them who are widely believed to be part of the Casamance Rebellion or Casamance Freedom Fighters, if I may use that.
Rebellion is fine.
Yes. So, and they come to Gambia time to time to rest and replenish and probably do some logistics and, get some supplies and go back. And they've been going back and forth periodically. I know some of these people. I'm in no position to categorically say they're part of the rebellion or the freedom fighters. But so this may have been happening. So it is, looking at the proximity of the Gambia and Senegal, it is very plausible that Casamance fighters do come to the Gambia regularly to replenish, to rest, to recuperate, and probably get some supplies.
Go to Bullock.
And go back, yes.
Go to Bullock. They come in to buy rice in Bullock.
Yeah.
Some of them go all the way to Brikama.
Right.
In my own village,
Mhm.
I noticed a guy who, I don't know why they even allow that guy to have a house by himself
Yeah.
in the outskirts of the village. And
Yeah.
I told them that this guy at night travels to customers.
Yeah, but that is the one of the complications of this Casamance Senegal thing. Casamance and Gambia are pretty, at some level, around the border areas. Funny, but Casamance and Gambia, almost the border doesn't exist.
Yeah, it doesn't exist.
So it is very difficult, especially since these rebels have been pushed away from Guinea-Bissau area. They all moved down to Gambian border area. It's become really, really problematic for the Gambia to deal with this. But Dr. Conteh, to make this also clear, is that Jammeh is not going to be prosecuted any soon because there's no way to get him. And even if we get him, Jammeh cannot be prosecuted in the Gambia. The laws and the courts are not adequate to prosecute him. He will likely have to be prosecuted outside the Gambia.
Yeah.
And also, having said that, just to put some cap to this, in the TRRC report, Dr. Conteh, I think something also came out. TRRC recommendations. There was, I don't know if it's a statement by the lead counsel. I saw this published somewhere, either on Facebook or some newspaper, that where there's a statement, it appears to be coming from the lead counsel, SFR, about his criticism of the witchcraft thing, Jammeh's witchcraft thing, that witchcraft does not exist, and that witchcraft, he was basically castigating the practice and the people who believe in it, and how backward it is, and that it has no place in Gambian society, which I agree. I don't believe in crap like that, but that is my personal opinion. I do feel like whatever people believe in and whatever they practice needs to be respected. However, what we should be concerned about is when their practice is harming other people. They cannot use their belief or practice to target, discriminate, and harm other people. That is criminal. Anybody who does that should be arrested and prosecuted. But the fact that they believe in it and the fact that they practice it in their personal way, I have no business with that. And the state, as well as the TRRC, should have no business with that. They should not forget that the Gambia is a very, very religious society. 90-something% of our people are Muslims, including my mom, right? And, some 10% are Christians. There's a small minority, probably less than 1%, who may belong to other systems of beliefs. So, talking about superstitions, Gambia talking about superstitions, and we are very religious people. We believe in. so when I see people talking about, the Gambia a lot of people are superstitious. They believe in witchcraft. I was like, and what problem do you have with that? How about 90% of us who believe in Islam? Some 10% of us who believe in Christianity. I mean, talk about superstition, talk about, what are we talking about? in US, there are lots of people who believe in racism, right? And, nobody has any problems. I have no problem with them. You can believe in what you believe in. Don't just bring it to me, right? And you cannot use it to discriminate against other people or disproportionately marginalize other people. That's where the problem is. But as far as what happens in your brain, what happens in your head, what you think and what you believe in, it's entirely up to you. You can take it wherever you can, but don't bring it to me. Don't bring it to other people who do not need to deal with that. So I just wanted to briefly touch on that. I think the TRRC report should focus on practices that harm other people, individuals and societies and groups, rather than try to lecture Gambian people what to believe and what not to believe, and what to practice and what not to practice. So I think it is important to bring that out. It may look backward and superstitious to somebody, but what you believe in, the one criticizing what that person believes in, may equally look superstitious, and may actually be superstitious, and may be equally irrational. Because we don't have any proof of any of these things. They're just beliefs, right? So that much I wanted to tell the TRRC and its lead counsel I actually call it a dictum. I call it the TRRC's dictum on witchcraft and superstition. Dictum is, I think it's a technical term the legal people use when a judge makes comments that have no relation to the law and the facts of the case. Dr. Conteh, if you have anything else on this, otherwise we're gonna call it.
No, I'm fine. It's been a pleasure that we came back to do this. And next week, I guess I'll see you next week.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Conteh. I have to say that my trip to Gambia, I had a fantastic time. People were very nice to me. I had a very supportive family. My extended family. I got to see my mom. She's quite aged now, but she's in very good health. Surprisingly, I want to thank my brothers for taking good care of her while I was away. My uncles, I got to see my uncles, my aunties, my sisters, my cousins, my wife's family. Everybody's been terrific. I cannot ask for anything more. I've been, treated very, very well, way beyond my expectations. Food coming from left and right. Only one person was cooking for me, Dr. Conteh. Okay. She's a terrific cook. She's my wife's sister. Very terrific, very, very nice people. Everybody was great. I love it. So I'm going to return back soon. And I got a chance to speak with the speaker, Dr. Conteh.
Okay.
The speaker of the National Assembly. He's a distant relative. We had a brief discussion, but I'm going to follow up when I return back. Shortly, I'm hoping. And then, from there, we'll see. I'll probably try to meet the president at some point. But I don't know. That might be a tough call. I know we have some contacts there, but we'll see. We'll see next time what happens.
Okay.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Conteh. We want to thank our audience for being here. I know we've been away for some time, but we are back. So hopefully we will be seeing you regularly every Sunday and talk about important topics that concern the Gambia. We will try to bring in more people also. I've invited a couple of people today, but I was late to get in touch with them. Hopefully we will get Hassan back shortly. He's been busy with his PhD work. Okay. So we'll see again, Dr. Conteh. Thank you very much for being here with me.
Take care.
You too. Thanks.
Bye-bye.